Today we're doing a Q&A session about the Kimbo and the Tacoma combo. What kind of miles per gallon am I getting? How heavy is this thing? How much do they cost? And a lot more. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. We're doing a Q&A about the Kimbo, the Satlander, Tacoma, Kimbo combo. I've owned this camper for about a month now, and we've been traveling in the camper almost full time. I finally made it back to Colorado, so I'm soon going to drop this thing off for the summertime, throw my Diamondback cover and a tent back on for summer camping. The whole reason behind the Kimbo was really to be a nimble, simple, functional way to travel in the wintertime because we're still getting snow here in Colorado. It's June now and we just got snow up in the mountains, so the amount of time that we can tent camp comfortably is fairly short compared to other states out there. This is currently winter mode and we're going to be transitioning to summer mode, but more on that later. Now, I asked you guys over on Instagram, posted a questionnaire. I said, what do you want to know about the Kimbo? You guys have already been asking quite a lot of the same questions throughout videos, so I'm going to try to cover everything possible, and if I leave any questions unanswered, then let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. So in no particular order, first question. Do you miss the smaller footprint of the rooftop tent for tighter off-roading? Yes and no. I definitely like the smaller footprint of running a Diamondback cover with a tent on it. It makes the truck as nimble as it possibly can be. The reason I chose the Tacoma over something like a Tundra is because I wanted this thing to be pretty narrow. A lot of the trails in Colorado are super tight. You can snag on trees and stuff like that. So I definitely would prefer a tent when I'm really doing some like hardcore wheeling. However, this is the winter setup for the truck, so I can manage because it's about the same size as the van, and we'll talk about more of that a little bit later. What's the build time for one of those beauties? The build time, at least when I placed my order, was roughly either 6 to 8 months. And I can't tell you guys for certain right now. The best way to find out would be to contact Kimbo, but with supply chain and everything that's going on in the world, those times are definitely going to vary. The best way to get one as quick as possible is to get your name on the list to have one built, which I did like even before I bought the truck. So you definitely have to have some patience, but at the same time, these are handmade in America and I wouldn't have it any other way. Next question, super common question. How much is the Kimbo? A rough pricing estimate for Kimbos can be found on their website, although as of right now, their website really isn't the greatest. Hopefully they update that in the future. But if you go under, I believe, the dimensions tab on their website, campers like this can range from about $22,000 on the low end all the way up to $40,000 on the high end. This camper specifically is somewhere in the middle there. It's essentially fully loaded minus some other like really niche options. If you get a Kimbo fully loaded out with everything that you guys have seen in mine, you can also add, I believe, like some ski racks to the roof. There's a few different options that you can add to a Kimbo on top of what you see in mine, and that would put you closer to the $40,000 range. Again, that is stuff that may be changing, so the actual way to find out real-time pricing is to contact Kimbo directly. Next up, how does it compare to the Sprinter for comfort, livability, etc.? This one's kind of tough to answer because I have both the van and the Kimbo for kind of different purposes. When it comes to comfort, I think I feel more comfortable in here just because of the build quality, the soft walls, materials, the fireplace. This feels way more cozy than my van does. But then to your next point, the livability, I have been living out of the Kimbo for a little while now. However, it requires just a little bit more work than living out of the van. The van, plumbing, electrical, everything is all like built into the van. If I want to use a toilet or shower, I just simply walk into the shower, turn everything on, and I'm good to go. The Kimbo, when it comes to showering, I of course have to lift up the seat that I'm sitting on right now. If I want hot water, I either need to plug my geyser shower systems in and let it heat up, or boil water like you guys have seen us do. So in my opinion, it's definitely easier to live out of the van, but when it comes to comfort, this bed alone is so comfortable. This might be more comfortable than the bed in my bedroom at our house. Definitely more comfortable than the van bed, and it's just cozier in here. I love spending time inside of the Kimbo, so they each have their own pros and cons, and I'm probably gonna do a side-by-side comparison of the two in the future, so we will talk more about that later. Here's a question that I've got asked time and time again. We actually answered it in one of the first Kimbo walkarounds that I've done like 2 years ago. What happens if someone decides to close your tailgate, swing out while you're inside? I'm going to quote my friend Mark and the designer of the Kimbo on this one. He said, if someone closes a tailgate while you're inside the Kimbo, first, find the person and kick them in the shins. But the real answer to that to get out is simply just open the back window by the door and I can reach down and actually access my tailgate. Now with my truck and having the swing out on there, if someone closes the tailgate and the swing out and for some reason they do it quick enough that I don't realize, it would be a little bit more difficult. But as you can see, these windows open and they are big enough that I could crawl out of this window. The front window is even bigger, so I could just sort of shimmy out the front window and climb down the side of the truck. I'm not going to demonstrate that for you guys right now, but it's definitely possible to get out of here. I have not had that happen. I've heard of people saying, oh, my friends are idiots and they would totally do that. Maybe you should get new friends. Next question, how do you manage laundry living off-grid? I wouldn't really say that I live off-grid. I do spend a lot of time away from home, on the road, in remote areas without cell phone reception and things like that, but I'm not like fully living off-grid. The way that I've been doing it when I was living in the van and now traveling around in the Kimbo, I typically have about 2 weeks worth of clothing with me at all times. If I need to shower, which is few and far between when compared to just like living at home, I can change my clothing if I get something dirty or rip something. I have spares of pretty much everything. I have like 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. I have extra shirts and everything else. But if I get to a point where I do need to do laundry, typically I will just go and visit a friend that's in the area. I'll be like, hey man, can I use your washer and dryer? Typically, if you have nice friends, they will just say yes, and that's typically how I do laundry. Also, laundromats. When I was living in the van, I was doing laundry at friend's house for pretty much that entire like 2.5 years. There was one occasion we were in Santa Cruz, California, where I actually went to a laundromat. So just go and get some quarters and do your laundry like normal. How's it handle when it's off camber? Can you feel the roll? As we were off-roading over the past couple of videos, I did notice that it feels like the tipping point is definitely a little bit higher, but at the same time, a lot of the weight is either level with the cab or even down a little bit lower. I know it's kind of hard to envision, but the top of the cab of the truck sits right about here, so the rest of the weight is in line with this or lower. So we have the fridge at the same height, the heater, the AC, the power system, all of the heavier components are down lower. Of course, you do have the structure up top that sits much higher than the cab of the truck, but everything in here, like I've talked about a bunch before, it's just inch thick aluminum with some insulation in there, so most of the weight is down low and it really doesn't feel like top heavy or tippy. In some of the off-camera situations that we were in, I just kind of took it slow and nice and easy. When you're off camber and bouncing around on roads, like I talked about in a previous video, the Kimbo will kind of bounce and shift a little bit, but that's all completely normal. Once you're back and driving on a straight road, it basically like centers itself. Can you take those legs off the side of it? Yes, I can take the legs off. They are completely removable. The reason I haven't done it is because between the time that I picked it up and this time now that I'm back in Colorado, I knew I was going to drop the Kimbo off and turn the truck into summer mode with my Diamondback cover and a tent. When I put this back on in the fall, once it starts snowing again here in Colorado, I will probably remove the legs and just leave this thing on for wintertime. So you guys may see a video of that in the future. How much more respect do strangers give you now? The truck was already kind of a head turner. It's pretty crazy with the wrap and everything, but I built it for a reason. So whenever I would stop for gas, strangers would come up and ask me questions about the truck, and now it happens more than ever because the Kimbo just looks crazy. It looks like a spaceship, a lunar lander. It's just unlike anything else out there on the road. So a lot of people come up. I don't know if they're giving me respect or if they're just curious about it, but it's definitely a conversation piece and I really enjoy it. Next up, I love my Roam canopy. Any plans, or is there even a way to install one? I don't really plan on adding a canopy. I have one on my van and I really never use it. I think you could put one possibly on this side over the window here, maybe on the other side, like underneath the ladder. What's cool about the Kimbo is that it allows you to basically repair it all yourself. I can pull all of these wall panels off, and there are ways that people mount Rotopack mounts and Max Track mounts, and I'm sure you could easily add a canopy to it, but that's not really in my plans as of right now. If you didn't go with the Kimbo, what other platform would you have picked? For example, GFC, SP, etc. So with that question, the GFC and the SP, those are truck campers, but not on any close level to a camper like this. Those type of campers are super rad. I would love to own one and I would love to travel in one. This one, however, is more of like a home, whereas the GFC and the SPs are more of like tent camping, but with some extra space so you can stand in the bed. The reason I went with the Kimbo compared to some of the other options that may be closer related than the GFC or the SP, we're talking like four-wheel camper, pop-ups, and scout campers and stuff like that. A lot of the other options that are comparable to the Kimbo are very RV feeling, which I personally don't really like. This is all handmade and it's just so different from anything else out there, so that's really the reason why I went with the Kimbo. The build quality has been awesome. It's super spacious in here, which is really hard to put into photos and videos. Like, this feels like a little cabin in the back of a Tacoma, which is crazy. And after looking at all of the different options for quite a few years, I was stuck on the Kimbo from the first time that I saw it, and I'm super happy to be an owner of one now. How is it secured to your truck, or how easy is it to attach and detach? Well, if you go back through some of my videos, you can see how we put the Kimbo on the back of the truck. Generally with like a stock Tacoma, you simply back up, lower it down into the bed, and then you put ratchet straps in each corner. These are designed specifically for the Tacoma, although they do work on other trucks. So it's just 4 ratchet straps in the corner, put the tailgate up, and this thing really can't go anywhere. Now my setup is quite different because of the way that I have the truck set up. I do have a riser underneath here. I do have a swing out, so I do have to remove some of the accessories on there to actually get this thing in and out. But if you're looking to get into a Kimbo and you want to have that ability to pull up to a campsite, drop the camper, and then go wheeling and then come back, those are some factors that you have to think of, like a swing out bumper and other accessories that may hinder your ability to do that. But overall, it's very easy to load and unload the Kimbo. You just have to sort of iron out the process for your specific build. Next up, how does it do in crosswinds on the highway? I am, of course, used to driving my Sprinter van around, which has some pretty decent suspension on it, and when the wind hits it, you can feel it, but not as much as a van with stock suspension. The same thing sort of applies to the Kimbo. If you are not used to driving around in a big vehicle like that, we're talking like 10-foot tall Sprinter van with crosswinds coming on a highway, it's definitely not comfortable, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it. So this really doesn't feel any different in the winds than driving the Sprinter van. If anything, I would say it's a little bit better because it's shorter overall, and the suspension on the truck is way better than the suspension on the van. So having good suspension alone kind of sucks up any kind of body roll and stuff like that. So it's comparable, but I would say that driving in high winds and off-road, off-camber, all sorts of different situations like that, this is definitely more comfortable to travel with. To piggyback off of that question, how is highway driving with extra weight? This is something I've talked about quite a lot throughout this whole series, but I built the truck to handle the weight, to basically carry this camper around in the wintertime. So with all of the modifications that I've done to the truck, with the gears, the brakes, so I'm able to stop, the Pro Tune that was designed for my truck, the intake, and the throttle grenade, everything that I put on this truck was to handle the weight. And people don't believe me when I say this, but it drives pretty damn normally. The biggest thing was definitely the 529 gears, because that just was really to push around the 35-inch tires. And I didn't notice a huge benefit until I had the camper on the back. And I was pretty surprised when we first started driving away, because you can tell the weight's back there, but it's really not that bad. Again, no one's going to believe me when I say that, but if you drive this truck with the Kimbo on it, you would know what I mean. I'm going to lump the next two questions together. One is Tacoma power and suspension that you used, and also, can you post an entire build list or what was done and what products? I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I've talked about this time and time again, and if you go over to my website, sciproductions.com, go under the Sci Garage tab, you can find a full build list with links to products for all of my vehicles. We're talking the van, we're talking the Tacoma, we're talking my motorcycles, and basically everything that you've seen here on the channel. I posted all the links and discount codes and stuff like that over there, so you can find all the power mods, all the suspension mods, or you can just go back through and watch some of the recent videos where I talk about it all. I was waiting for this question. The silver and purple logo looks good, but do you think colors would be an option in the future? I actually just went to visit my buddy Jake at Lucid Wraps this morning, and the plan the entire time was to change the logos. I have nothing against purple. It's a color of royalty and whatever else. But I was not a huge fan of the purple logos on the Kimbo, so we basically took some measurements and cut out textured black vinyl for the logos on the Kimbo. It matches some of the wrap on the truck. I have my tailgate wrapped in the same material as well as my door handles and mirrors, so all of the logos all around the Kimbo are now a textured black, and it looks sick. Jake, huge thank you again for doing that, and if anyone is in the Colorado area, or even if you're outside of Colorado and you want some of the best vehicle wraps around, check out Lucid Wraps. I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description down below. How did you find out about the Kimbo? Any of your friends have one? No, none of my friends have one. Before I actually picked mine up, I had only seen maybe 2 or 3 Kimbos out in the wild as I've been traveling around. When you do see one, it's like a unicorn sighting because there's only about 200 of these campers out on the road right now. But the way that I found out about Kimbo was through Travax and the creator Mark King. Unless you're extremely new to this channel, you know that I love EDC products, especially Travax stuff. So the mastermind behind Travax products is also the guy who created Kimbo, and I saw his super early prototypes like back in 2016, 2017, and it was just so cool. My first time sitting in one was actually with Mark, who created these, and as soon as I stepped inside, it's just such a cool experience. It's really, really hard to describe. I just fell in love with the design aspect of these things right from the beginning, and when I was thinking about putting a camper on the back of a truck, I really didn't even consider anything else. I did look at a few different companies to see what they had to offer, but I knew basically from the first time that I stepped foot inside of a Kimbo that I wanted to own one at some point. And now we're here. What would you change if you could change anything? That's a good question because I like to modify things, and I really haven't modified anything on the Kimbo yet other than the logos that we just talked about. I think there would be some very subtle changes, like in a recent video I talked about how I might change the shower setup just like very minimally. I have added things like this little patch of grass over here, but that's not really changing anything. It's just like making it feel homey. I really don't know what I would change about the Kimbo. I've been in this for a month now, and I just really enjoy the layout. Everything is super well thought out. If I can think of something that I would change in the future, I will definitely let you guys know on a video, but as of now, I really love this thing. And now, last but not least, the moment you guys have all been waiting for. This question has been asked in every single video that I've ever posted of the truck and Kimbo combo. What's the impact on fuel economy? This is going to be another one that people don't believe. Videos and photos really don't do the size of the Kimbo justice. A lot of times it looks really big, but then when you see it in person, it's like, oh, that's a little bit smaller than I thought, because the truck underneath it, being a Tacoma, the Tacoma is kind of big. A stock Tacoma is generally small, but with all the modifications that I've done, this is a pretty big Tacoma. So I built the truck to be really good off-road, which generally makes it a little bit bigger, and then with the Kimbo on the back, it fits pretty damn well. This thing is tall. We're talking about as tall and wide as the van, so fuel economy. Again, everything that I've done to the truck with the gears, the tune, the intake, all that stuff. The 35-inch tires throws off your actual readout for what MPGs you're getting when you're out there traveling around. It also changes the actual speed. So as we were traveling around, I was basically tracking myself via GPS and then finding out actual gas mileage and actual speed as we were moving around. So for the numbers, when I'm driving around town, I'm generally getting better fuel economy than I am on the highway because of air resistance. A baseline for my truck with all of the components and it's set up exactly the same, I'm roughly getting about 12 to 12.5 miles per gallon driving around town, driving on back roads, averaging maybe like 50 to 55 miles per hour. Now moving out to the highway, if I am keeping my speed under 70 miles an hour, so if I'm doing like 55 to 65 in a straight line, just kind of cruising, I've seen the numbers go all the way up to about 13.5 to 14 miles per gallon, which is kind of insane. A lot of people don't believe that, but I have all the numbers and data logs to prove it all. But then when it really takes a hit is when you're going over 65. So when you're doing like 70, 75, sometimes even 80 miles an hour, believe it or not, yes, the truck can do 80 miles an hour with the Kimbo on the back. The readout will say that I'm doing probably like 72 to 74, but via GPS, I'm actually doing 80 miles an hour. Then it really takes a hit. If I'm doing 75 to 80 miles an hour on the highway with this big thing on top and the wind resistance, I'm getting maybe like 10 miles per gallon on a good day. The worst that I've seen it was driving really fast into a headwind, and I think it went all the way down to about 9 miles per gallon, maybe even a little lower, maybe like 8.8 miles per gallon. The only time that I'm traveling that fast is when I'm with other people. Generally, I travel solo, so as long as I'm driving around by myself, I just kind of moderate my speed how I see fit, and I would say average overall, I'm getting like 12.5 miles per gallon. Again, that's something that people probably won't believe, but I have no reason to lie about that, so that's it. That's about all of the questions that I have here. There's a lot of repeat questions, but like I mentioned in the beginning, if there's anything that I missed, let me know in the comments down below. I will try to answer anything. Occasionally, I'll get very specific questions of people like asking for measurements and stuff like that, so I would suggest going over and checking out Kimbo's website, and if it's something that I can't answer, chances are they will be able to answer. So I'll leave a link to their website and everything else in the description down below. I think that's it. It's now time to go drop the Kimbo off, which I'm kind of sad about. I would like to keep this thing on full time, but I want to be a little bit more nimble in the trees and the tight trails of Colorado, so it's about time to engage summer mode. That is all that I had for today. If you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.